Most people would say it's crazy to build a project management software today. There are ClickUp, Asana, Monday.com, and a lot of other companies that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars and have entire teams just for A/B testing their onboarding flows. And yet, Davidson Wicker did it anyway. He's the founder of Ravetree, a project management and collaboration tool built for agencies and professional services companies. But here's the twist. Ravetree didn't raise any capital. They bootstrapped from day one, so they have small team, no venture capital, no crazy burn rate, and still, somehow they have managed to win real B2B customers in one of the most competitive SaaS categories on the planet. Today, we are going to talk about how he did it, how you survive and grow in a market full of giants, what channels actually work when you don't have a marketing department of 20, and why staying small might be actually your unfair advantage. So let's jump in. Davidson, thank you for making it. I love a good founder story, but yours start with physics, not software. So tell me, how does someone with a background in physics end up running a project management platform?
Yeah, I got good question. So, well, I don't know how to answer that. I guess I got, my degrees in physics, but I never really intended to be a physicist. I just kind of was interested in it, knew that I was going to do other things. I did teach for a couple of years, and that was really just because I graduated and was like, well, I've got to find a job. So, did that for a couple of years, but then I went and started doing software. And I worked mostly at product companies, like Ravetree, where we just built, this one thing. But the last job that I had was at a software agency. And I saw it was very different, billable hours, that kind of thing. And the company had built an internal tool to try to manage everything. And it was awful. It didn't work. The developers there, we worked on it, when we had free time between projects. And I've seen this before at other companies. I've heard people talk about similar things where they try to build an internal tool and it never works, ever. So, I said, you know what, I can do this. And I saw the challenges and the problems. So that's kind of like what led me down this path of building Ravetree. So yeah, that's sort of the origin story.
So you built that for yourself first, like let's say for a company that you worked for, and did you think that you can sell that to some other companies that might have the same problem?
Well, to clarify, I didn't build it for the company that I worked at. I built it, after I left the company, I decided I wanted to build something that could address the needs of agencies in general. My experience was at a software agency, but I knew agencies of really any kind had a lot of common issues and pain points. Um, so that's kind of where it started. It wasn't me building it just, for the company. I started building it. And as far as customers, like, did I know who the customers would be? I thought I knew, and I was pretty close to being right with my assumptions. But, as with any startup, you think who you're going to sell to, and it ends up usually at the very least being a little bit different. And so I was fairly close, but I, had a lot of conversations with companies, especially in my area, to see if this is something they would be interested in. I showed them, the prototype and kind of, took it from there.
Thank you for clarifying that. And have you had any specific problem you were trying to solve with that software?
Well, at the time, and so, this is back in like 2016 or so, and this is a while back, even maybe 2015. The software that was available then, it wasn't like today. You didn't have, although some of these companies had technically started, but they weren't big names like, all the ones everyone's heard of: Monday, ClickUp, Asana, et cetera. So there were tools out there, but there was no one who was like the clear winner, and it wasn't as saturated as now. I mean, obviously it's a really crowded space. So yeah, it's definitely different back then than it is now.
And Yeah, that's actually really, really crowded space. I would say in terms of software, like for B2B companies, maybe a CRM would be more competitive than project management software, but that's definitely a top tier competition, I would say. And have
Right.
you considered like a level of competition then? Like, was there any big player in the space at the time?
Not really. There was Jira. So coming from software, we were using Jira, and although they've, evolved obviously over the years to try to, be more compatible with agencies. Uh, I didn't like it. It's a powerful tool, but I thought it was very clunky and so on. I would say that was kind of the big one. Now, like, we don't compete with Jira. Like, no one ever comes to us and says, "Hey, we're looking at Ravetree or Jira." That's maybe that's happened like once out of the thousands of demos that I've given. Um, but that's not our competitor today. The competitors um, that the companies that are coming to us are coming from tools like ClickUp Asana Monday. They're using them and they realize, well, there's got to be something better suited for a an agency setting. Companies that are doing billable hours. So yeah, today there's definitely a handful for sure, but back then it was probably mostly Jira.
Got it. How did you define your niche and differentiate Ravetree early on? Like you mentioned that you were intended to build a software for agencies who sell hours. Have you had any specific ICP or buyer persona or something like that?
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely do now. It tends to be, agency owners, between like in their 30s to 50s is kind of like the range. I mean, I can narrow it down more than that, but yeah, it's definitely, um, although we have customers all over the world, English speaking countries, we're not fully internationalized right now. So, we've got customers Australia, UK, South Africa, all over the place. But it tends to be, English speaking um, agency owners between, late 20s to mid 50s. It's kind of the typical buyer. And more specifically, it's usually the founder or like an operations director at the company, COO, maybe a director of project management. It depends on the size of the company, but we're typically dealing with SMB, so we're not dealing with enterprise, where it is common for us to be dealing directly with the founder of the company.
Yeah, that's actually quite relatable because I remember those days where I've chosen ClickUp for project management software, and I would say that project management software is a kind of a tool that you choose once and you don't really want to change along the way. Only if it is letting you down somehow,
Yeah.
or it's not keeping up with the progress of competitors. But in other cases, that's so hard to replace. I mean, it requires so much effort, time, and so on. And I think it's not just worth it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's definitely a little bit of pain in making a transition, but people do it for a reason. They might have a specific pain point that is really bothersome and that affects them every day. And for us, there's kind of three people that we're targeting within a company. There's the owner. They just want their dashboard. They want a metric, a number, 100. That's all they want to see. Then you have managers, and they want all the bells and whistles. And then you have, the doers at the company who, they just want something as simple as possible. They don't really care about the bigger picture necessarily. They're there to do their job, which might be design or software or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of how we see things sort of distributed. But it's yeah, it can be painful. We make it as easy as possible, and I think it's easier when we can demonstrate to them that, if they're currently using a handful of different tools, and usually it's at least two different tools that they can consolidate into one with Ravetree. That alone is going to solve enough pain that they already have, that the time and effort to transition it's worth it. And it really doesn't take long to transition. It doesn't take as long as you might think.
That's interesting. All right. So you started Ravetree when ClickUp has never existed before, and maybe Monday.com as well. But then your market becomes crowded, and some companies raise like hundreds of millions of investments, and you didn't. Was that intentional, or you just, I don't know, didn't want to, or didn't know how to, or can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, one of the reasons someone might decide to start a company is because they want to work for themselves. And that was very much a motivating factor for me. Not the only one, but one for sure. And so I knew that I did not want to go out and get investments. I knew that I wanted to bootstrap, and there's obviously pros and cons to doing it both ways. Um, with that being said, early on when I was starting, even though I said, yeah, I'm not going to take money, things get challenging in the beginning, and I said, well, let me go out and meet these investors and talk to some people just to kind of see what that looks like. And we, met with a lot of people, and we actually had one deal where we had the term sheet, the lawyers had everything drafted up, we were about to sign it, and I decided, yeah, and this was really because we had a disagreement on the terms, and the investors wouldn't budge, and I said, okay, well, we're out. So we walked away, and honestly, that was the best decision I ever made, because I feel that if we had gone down that path, I would have been miserable. I really dealing with investors is, it's a job, unto itself, and it was a job I didn't care to have. I didn't want to deal with investors. I wanted to deal with customers and the product, and we've been bootstrapped the entire time.
That's I think that's quite popular in the bootstrapped community um, to avoid those types of conversations and pressure as well, because when when you raise some money, you owe them. It's not
Yeah.
free. It's not a gift. You have to earn that back to investors somehow in the future, and yeah, that can be some level of pressure, I think, on the
Yeah,
founder.
absolutely. Yeah. One other, point about that is when you take money, the focus shifts. So we were always very product focused and customer focused. And if you take investments, it 100% shifts to sales. Like you can't get backed by VCs and then have them say, yeah, we're okay having outstanding customer support and putting funds into that, or really, focusing a ton on the product. It's really mostly about sales and, marketing as a, side effect, or really sales is the side effect of marketing, but it's very sales driven. So, um, yeah, it's just a different approach, but I always wanted to have obviously a great product, but also a product that had great customer support. And if you talk to our customers, they'll tell you that's, definitely something that they appreciate about Ravetree.
You've been bootstrapped all the way, as you said, and you haven't raised any capital, but you definitely had some toughest moments where you thought like maybe we should raise some funds and uh, like build a bigger company so it's more sustainable, it's easy to maintain, and so on. Have you had any moment like that?
I have not, no, I haven't. So early on, when I was sort of saying, well, let me just see what this investor thing is, what's this all about? It was more just me just being curious and wanting to see what that path would look like. It wasn't so much like, oh crap, we have to do this. We're going to go out of business if we don't. It wasn't that kind of a scenario. But ever since I have not once looked back. We have investors reach out almost every day. I get emails and phone calls from, you know, investors, of different types, wanting, just taking an interest in Ravetree. I just, delete all the emails. I don't respond. We're just not interested in that right now. Um, will we be in the future? I don't know, maybe, but my thoughts now are that we're thriving and we want to continue to do what we're doing. And we don't really need venture capital money. Of course, taking money can allow you to grow more quickly, but we're fine with where we are right now. So I don't think it's something that we're looking at exploring maybe ever, certainly not anytime soon.
And what do you think is the main advantage of staying independent?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot, you don't have to deal with investors, I think that's a big one. And it's just another thing you have to manage, all the relationships around that. It's just, to me, it's, I don't want to deal with that. But yeah, just being able to stay focused on the product and customer support, that those are things that we can do that would be, kind of put on the back burner. At least it seems to be the case with a lot of companies that take VC money. The customer support isn't usually great or there at all. We have conversations every week with prospects who are coming from all the big names you've heard of, and they're like, yeah, the customer support's terrible. They don't listen to us, or they said they're going to fix something or build something, years ago. It still hasn't happened. And so for us, that's a big opportunity because, we listen, we're going to build that feature if they ask, and if it's something that we think fits into our development pipeline, because, we know who our target market is, we know what they want. And yeah, so hopefully that.
Yeah, I think that's quite important, especially if you have some bugs. People at least want to feel that you know about that and you take care of them, so they just need to wait and so on. All right, and so that was about the early days of Ravetree, right? But then when market was already crowded, I think you were in a situation where every SaaS founder would think only about one thing, mostly, and how to actually get customers, and especially when you cannot outspend Monday.com and ClickUp on ads. So how did that work for you?
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge, and I've tried just about everything, and I can tell you what worked for us and what didn't work. So initially, we thought, well, let's just pay to be on all those lists that you see, top 10 project management software. There's dozens of them. It's pay to play. If anyone's on the list, they're number one, not because they're the best, it's because they pay the most. That's really what it's all about. And early on, some of those lists did work. It cost a lot of money, but they were somewhat effective. That has completely changed now. And we tried not that long ago, we kind of had taken a break from that approach, and we said, well, let's try it again. And it just didn't work at all. And, there's probably a lot of reasons for that. One is that maybe, it's just more competitive now. It could be there's just more noise and people aren't, paying attention. But those were highly, I'd say those are highly ineffective for us right now. We tried email marketing. Email marketing is, I think, the worst. Doesn't work at all. We tried cold calling. I spent, times where I was just on the phone all day long, and I, committed to it and said, I'm going to try this for a certain amount of time, and found that I don't think that works. I think, you'll get people that'll disagree. And I think it depends on your infrastructure, if you've got the team to support it. But at the end of the day, what has worked for us is word of mouth, believe it or not, and also SEO, which is something regrettably I neglected early on. I kind of took the mindset that, well, I can put in tons of time and effort into SEO, and maybe I'll move from being on the, 80th search result page to the 50th, and that doesn't mean anything. And so, but I think in hindsight, that was the wrong attitude towards it. Since I've been focusing on it, and honestly, with the help from your team, we've seen a lot of success with it. I've really focused on the blog and writing content that we think is useful to our customer base. Yeah, for us, it's really SEO, word of mouth. That's worked quite well for us, and there's no direct costs to do those things. So
Yeah, I
that's what's
think
working for us now.
word of mouth works every time when your when your product or service is good enough
Right.
to not be like shy to promote that for your coworkers and friends. But with SEO, you raised like quite an interesting topic, I think. So, as I understand, you end up trying that, and you made some progress with like being not in a 80th position, but somewhere in between. Uh, how did that affect your traffic? Like, do people really open like 5 pages of Google search results to find a solution?
5, probably not. In like 99.9% of cases, but there's always going to be someone who wants to dig deep, and they might go that far in the results. But yeah, even page 5, most people would say even page 2 doesn't matter. But we've actually been fairly consistent being on the first search result page organically, for a handful of terms. Like best project management software for agencies. We've got pages that are, you can see, and if it varies from day to day. Even you could search for it and then search for it again later, and you might be on page 2. But we've worked hard to be on that first page, for a handful of keywords that are relevant to our target market.
And how does that work in 2025 with AI overviews?
Right.
Did that work out well for you, or not?
Yeah, I think it's been a mixed bag. People are still trying to figure out how those AI searches work. We've appeared in the searches. Many times when I search, we're in it. Other times we're not. It doesn't seem to be fairly consistent. Although you'll always see like Monday.com in there, and ClickUp. But we're sometimes we're in there, sometimes we're not. You'll notice that on Google, I forget what they call it, but on the kind of the right hand side, they'll list what supposedly are the sources that they use for their AI results. And we will, sometimes our blog articles will show up there. Sometimes it'll be the first one. So we're in there. I wouldn't say consistently, but we are appearing in those AI search results. And obviously it's something that, every day we're thinking about and looking at ways to ensure that we're always there.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And have you ever tried anything like G2 or some kind of listings where people compare software before purchasing?
Yeah, we have. And honestly, my take on it is it's a waste of money. G2, it's very much pay to play. They've got some things where you can pay. They've got sort of like a starter or like a startup package. I don't know what they call it, but and it didn't move the needle at all. They've got another option where you pay a fairly significant amount of money to have an enhanced profile. I don't think those things work, to be honest. I mean, that's just my opinion. But we did Capterra, and this is one where it used to work quite well back in 2019, but we have not gotten any good results since then. We tried it not that long ago, and it was really just a complete waste of money, to be honest.
What do you think could be the reason for that?
Well, I think it's noise. There's so much out there. People are just like, yeah, I don't want to see it. They're not. And the other reason is this. I think, like with AI search, you don't necessarily need to click into those sites to get the info. It's going to be presented to you. AI will extract the information for you without you needing to actually go there. that opens up all kinds of questions, like what's the future for those kinds of businesses. But I think a lot of people are still paying to be on this list because they believe that it helps with their ranking in AI search, and it probably does. Um, but I don't know that people are actually clicking into it. We also found that we were getting tons of what had to be fake clicks. I can't prove that a click is fake, but just like random, email addresses in the middle of the night, and then nothing during the day. It was it was really quite frustrating when we decided to re-engage with a lot of these platforms after taking a break. I mean, really around COVID up until say 2024, we kind of didn't really utilize those avenues. But then we said, well, let's try it again, and it was just a profound disappointment.
Yeah, I think there are can be so many reasons for that. So
Yeah.
it's hard to know for sure. But if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're Monday and you can put in, 10 million a month into ensuring you're always the number one spot on G2 or Capterra or whatever, then, at some level you could say it works, but they're publicly traded. They've got the funds to do it. It was not cost effective at all. It was just a complete waste of money.
Yeah, I think this kind of thing is also an attempt to be top of mind always, because if you're like number one in Google and G2 and so on, it helps to be like to win in the long run. But of course, yeah, for a small bootstrapped company, throwing away like thousands of dollars every month without seeing any traction is not the way you want to build like your company, right?
Exactly. And, I don't want to name names of companies, but there are some of our competitors that I know are successful, and you never see them on any of those lists. So they have different ways of marketing themselves. They're not trying to be the Walmart of project management, like, Monday ClickUp and Asana are doing. That's, that's sort of the way that I see it.
Have you tried paid ads or something like where you pay directly for clicks?
We have. We tried it several times, and I think, I'm not an expert on paid ads. Maybe I should be, but when we tried it, and we worked with some other people in the past, we it just sucked up a lot of money, and we had very bad results. I think if you put more maybe money into it, more effort, maybe a strategy that combines multiple things, perhaps it could be effective. But I think a lot of what I'm telling you, as far as my opinions on marketing, obviously take it with a grain of salt, because we're a bootstrap startup. We don't want to put money into any marketing. We want to get it all for free, So we're looking at things that cost very little money to no money at all, to help us move the needle. So that's why I have these opinions about some of these platforms.
Can you recommend any marketing channels that are can be a good fit for bootstrap SaaS company where you get almost free clients?
Well, I not really. I mean, I don't have a better answer than that. I think focusing on SEO and word of mouth, like really, if you're starting out, for us and probably for every startup, find those first 10 customers. That's the magic number, and get 10 customers that love your product and that will act as references for other potential customers. Because, early on, what happened a lot is, I'd have a demo, and then towards the end of the demo, they'd say, yeah, I like this. Okay. So, I haven't heard of you guys. How long have you been around? And it's like, well, we've been around, let's say a year, whatever it was at that time. And they'd say, well, can you send us some references, And obviously that's really hard when when you don't have customers and it's your first one. But once you have 10 and they love the product, then you can start, asking if they wouldn't mind, being a reference, and that helps a lot. So yeah, get those first 10 customers, even if you have to go and just show up at their office if it's a local company, and beg for them to take a demo and demonstrate to them how your product can help solve their problems, and then get them on board, and then from there it becomes easier. But it's hard to get those first 10.
Yeah, I agree with that point. And collecting testimonials of your clients starting from day one is essential for any business. All right, and I've asked you about how do you get clients when like competition is so hard to deal with, and there are probably some good sides of that. And do you think there is any advantages of being a small bootstrap B2B SaaS company rather than being like a publicly traded huge company?
Yeah, absolutely. So first is customer support, and then the second is building the product and knowing what customers want. Really like focusing on every single demo, every customer interaction that comes in from support. I read all the chats that come in, whether I was directly involved with it or not. I want to know what customers are saying, what they're asking for, how they're feeling. And I think once you get to a certain size, inevitably that it's harder to do that. It's harder to really know the pulse of your customer base. And for us, we know exactly what they want. We know exactly what they don't want. What they like, what they don't like. I mean, we know, and that's helped us build our product so that we now have, in my opinion, without a doubt, the absolute best work management software for client service businesses. If you're doing billable projects, we do it by far better than anyone else. And it's because we've spent the time having those conversations so we know what they want.
Yeah, I love that. I love this obsession with customer experience. Um, and Speaking of 2025 and your marketing in general, you've tried a lot of like different marketing channels.
Yeah.
Are you still testing some new ones or just doubling down on what already works for you?
Yeah, so we're kind of doubling down right now. Of course, your company helped us update our blog, which we were very happy with, and we're putting a lot of effort into writing content and promoting that content. So we're doing a lot of social, where we're kind of sharing blog articles. We're doing a lot of like videos and just things like that. So that's kind of what we're really focusing on right now.
If a founder came to you today saying that they want to build a B2B SaaS in a super crowded market, not your like future competitor, but let's say like CRM, right? What would you tell them?
Yeah, well, first of all, why are they wanting to get into a really crowded market? And just to kind of clarify with Ravetree, we're in a crowded market, but when we started, it wasn't as crowded. So it's not like we just all of a sudden said, let's jump into this crowded market. It just happened to evolve to be one. It's tough being in a crowded market. Obviously, the traditional advice is, really focus on a narrow target market and make sure you're addressing specific pain points for a specific type of client instead of trying to be generic. I mean, with CRM, I feel like there's more CRMs than project management tools. I mean, they're just kind of a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. And a lot of CRMs are being integrated into project management tools like with Ravetree and others. You also see them integrated into marketing automation, of course, HubSpot being the primary example. But yeah, as far as, a new founder wanting to jump into a crowded space, I mean, they would have to have something that really differentiates them from everything else. It might be some new technology, but there has to be something. It can't just be, hey, I think this would be fun. That's not enough to move the needle. So if they don't have anything that's unique, or any other really great reason, I would discourage it. And it does seem like there's, especially in project management, there's a lot of products even now. Like you still see new products coming out like almost every week, and they're just kind of clones of everything else. They don't really seem to actually be solving a problem. They're just saying we're project management. Okay, so what is different about what you're doing? So yeah, I would say, if I were starting a business today, I probably would not be in this space, because it's already so saturated. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough being in a crowded space for sure.
Got it. That's actually solid advice. It's like if you don't know why exactly you want to be in that specific market, if you have nothing to offer that is unique and proprietary, so that you probably should rethink that, right?
Agreed. Yeah, 100%.
All right, so let's end on a hot take. What's one opinion you have about B2B or SaaS marketing that you think most people would disagree with?
Email marketing does not work.
Do you mean cold outreach?
Yeah, cold outreach doesn't work at all. I can give you a quick story on that. So there's all these AI platforms that came out, like, we can send out all your emails using AI, and I've spent a lot of time doing a deep dive on this, doing it the right way, and setting up all the domains and the DMARC and all the stuff you have to do technically to get it set up correctly. I had lots of different email addresses. I only sent a certain amount each day under the limits that everyone was saying, and had them highly targeted. And it just was, no one read any of them. No one, I mean, I got 0 responses. I sent out, I don't want to tell you how many percent, but a lot. And I think in a way, a lot of AI tools, like these AI email tools, are kind of going to kill themselves, because on one hand, it's great that AI can do all this stuff and automate it, but at the end of the day, it makes it more noisy for the recipient, and they're just going to ignore it. And that's what's happened. So I think there's no future for them. I think email marketing is, just my opinion, is a complete waste of time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would disagree, and a lot would agree with that. And do you have anything to say on the opposite side, that something that most people think doesn't work, you think it just works?
Well, I don't know if it's something that most people would say doesn't work, but I know, just from recent experience with SEO, and recent, I mean, maybe within the last year or two, just really focusing on that. I think most people probably would agree that SEO is something that works, but that's what's worked well for us. So yeah, I think that's the best one that I've got. And of course, word of mouth, but that's sort of a different ballgame.
Yeah, Davidson, I love this. You've built something real in a space where most people would have given up before any line of code or before the first customer. So thanks for joining me, and to everyone listening, check out ravetree.com to see what the bootstrapped alternative to ClickUp and Asana looks like when it's built with purpose and a good customer support. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, Nick, thank you so much. It was great talking with you today.
Yeah, thank you. So if you enjoyed this episode, follow me on LinkedIn and follow Davidson as well. And subscribe to B2B Marketing Flywheel podcast for more stories from founders and B2B marketers. So thank you for your attention.